We're in the Follow Jesus series, and tonight we're going to be talking about disappointments and setbacks. We all face them, and I just felt like, man, we just need to stop for a moment and have a discussion about that, and about how do we image God well throughout those times and those seasons in our life when life is just not going great. And to start off, I wanted to bring you back again to some of my childhood. Again, we've seen the creepy Ronald McDonald setup. Like this was my childhood here, scary, and more scary and more scary. And you can't really see him very well in here, but this dude is creepy. I don't know what his name was. I don't know what he did. But this is the Ronald McDonald gang, and I'd shared the story before about having one of my favorite birthday parties at Ronald McDonald's. That was great. And our family, we didn't eat out all the time. We didn't. And it was a special deal. So McDonald's actually, in a kid's mind, my mind was like, this is awesome. Have you noticed that some of the things that you thought were really awesome as a kid, you get older and like, well, or things that were really hard when you were a child, you get older and like, well, this is one of those things. So we got to go to McDonald's to eat. And, I ate my meal. And then it was kind of a newfangled thing. They have cherry pies. And my parents were generous that day. They had purchased me a cherry pie, and I was so very excited to eat this cherry pie, and opened it up, cautioned the feeling may be hot, and it came out, and I took a bite, and I thought, ugh! And I looked in, and it was not cherries looking back at me. They were apples. And I'm like, no, not apple. No, cherry. Now for you and I, we're like, a pie is a pie, man. But remember, I'm little, and so I'm like, Mom, Dad. Well, if you want it fixed, you need to go to the counter and tell them. Well, I might offend them. I was a very sensitive child. I might offend them if I go up there, and they might yell at me. They might scream at me. What to do? And so I just sat in my tears and ate my apple pie that was supposed to be a cherry pie. It was very sad. But also back growing up, it's really easy to see why they made the mistake, because there's the cherry pie container, but here's the apple pie container. So they decided to use red apples with the red cherries. So you can see the person put in there. It's totally understandable. It's totally fine. That disappointment, not that big of a deal. But as we go throughout life, we have greater and greater and greater disappointments that we face. I know people in this room, I know there are people in this room who either have or are or will be walking through some major disappointments, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's getting kicked out of a program that you thought that's where you were supposed to go in your life, whether it's the end of a relationship, whether it's a job that you get canned from unjustly. We face these things all the time, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger magnitude. And so I know there are people in this room that we face that. Well, how do we image God well as we're walking through that? And the weird thing is, there have been people who have sat in this room who've gone through those things, and they've just disappeared. It's a very real part of life. How do we navigate that well? And this is one of the reasons why I love the Bible. I love it because when you hit these times where a relationship ends, or you lose a job, or a loved one that you were praying so hard for passes, we cry these questions out, like, why'd you let this happen? God, come on. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and you didn't give me what I wanted. Where were you? These are questions that we normally wouldn't ask in this setting, right? Because everything's good. But really, when these things hit, we ask these things. What are you doing? This makes absolutely no sense. I'm doing everything I can to be a good person, and yet you're heaping this stuff on me. So how do we walk well? And I love this because what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at three things. We're going to look at a truth, we're going to look at a story, and then we're going to look at a real-world example. Because to navigate these moments well, we got to have one truth. There's a multitude of truths that we could bank on, but there's one that I think is really, really important for us to park in the back of our mind. And that one is found in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8 and 9. And this is something we just need to understand about God versus us. And I don't know who has that lined up. Oh, thanks, Larissa.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
Awesome. My thoughts are not your thoughts. They're so much higher than yours. You have no clue what I am doing, God is saying. I am greater, and this is the way it is. There are many times our kids, Aaron and I kids, they look at us and like, we don't understand. This is not fair because they haven't grown and seen the things that we have seen. It's like this. In England, one of my favorite places to go when I lived there was to go to Leeds Castle because it had a moat, and I thought that was really neat. And it kind of went all the way around the castle. I thought that was really cool. And they had black swans, and I thought that was really cool. But what I really liked about Leeds Castle was the maze. See, the maze is just really cool. And you come in here, the idea is you come in here, and you're trying to get to the middle, to the tower. And then the exit, what is really cool, is the exit, you go down underground, and there's a rock grotto that you actually come back out the door over here underneath. So it's just really a cool thing. And after having been there once or twice or three times, by that time I kind of learned my way through the maze. So people are like, hey, I'll race you. All right. And I could navigate fairly quickly, and then I get up to the tower. And as I was up at the tower, you could see over all of the maze, and you'd see your friend, and they're like, no. And they become so locked into their low-level view, they become frustrated and irritated, and you're calling out like, hey, over here. Do you want some help? Just leave me alone, I'll figure it out. And they go around and go around. Strangers then call out, excuse me, yes, we've been in here an hour. We don't know how to get out or how to get forward. Would you please help us? Because they understood that my vantage point that I had in the middle of the tower, I could see everything and solve it. All they could see were these hedges every place they went. And this is what God is saying. He's saying, my ways are so much higher than your ways. What you see, your vision is just down here, but I'm up here. And I'm doing things that maybe you just don't understand. And it would seem weird as you're walking and people, what you'd say, okay, now go right. And but you're to the left of me. I know you have to go further away from me to get back into me. This makes no sense. And if they refuse to trust, they spend another hour in the maze. But as they kept their eyes up on the one who could navigate, who could see, good things happen. And so we need to keep this in mind. God is greater than us. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. And so when we're sitting there going, God, I don't get it. What are you doing? Okay. You shouldn't understand everything that I'm doing. You can't. I'm so much greater than you. But will you trust me? The story, we're going to be the entire evening in John chapter 11. And this is really cool. It's a story that you're probably familiar with. If you've been in church at all for longer than a week or two, you've probably heard the story of Lazarus, of a guy that Jesus is going to raise from the dead. Spoiler alert, so sorry. And in the book of John, this is the final miracle. There are only 7 miracles that are in the book of John. And they start with turning water into wine, and they grow in intensity and grow in magnitude. And this is it. This is the final one. And so while it's fun to look into this, what I want us to see is, man, when we hit these hard times, let's enter the story and feel what they're feeling. Let's ask the questions they're asking, and then let's allow Jesus to be Jesus. So with that, let's set up here. So the setting, the first thing you need to know is basically where this story is going to, you've got 2 dots up here. You got the red dot, okay, and you got the blue dot. And the blue dot is Jerusalem. That's where activities happen in John chapter 10, and then 11, when you get over there, we're in Bethany, just a little less than 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. So it's very close proximity. Now, what happened in 10 is kind of important in this because Jesus is hanging out and people are getting really mad at him. Just tell us plainly, are you the Son of God? Yes, I've already told you that. Urgh! And they pick up stones and they want to kill him. And so at the end of John chapter 10, we see this. We see the blue dot, which is where Jesus is. He does this. Because his time is not yet there. It's not yet come. And so he retreats. And he's hanging out where things first began for him. And there's an amazing ministry that's going on. People are coming to him from all over, and people are believing in him from all over. There's this huge revival that's going on. There are threats for his life down south. Up north, there's wonderful things that are going on. And that's the context of the story that we're going to walk into, because he's going to get a letter. The next thing that we need to know here are the people. You've got Martha, and you've got Mary, and you have Lazarus. They're a family group. You might have heard of them before and not realize that they all go together, but they're all together, sisters and brother. And it's good to know they lived in Bethany. They come from a very wealthy family. You're like, well, how do you know that? There's a lot of different things that go into it, with the number of people who are coming out to console them with the loss of Lazarus, with the offering that the anointing that Mary pours onto Jesus' feet. There's great wealth here. And so they come from a fairly well-off family. They're friends of Jesus. We're going to see this, that they're not just like random people walking up. They know Jesus. They house Jesus. There's a personal relationship going on with Jesus. He knows. It's not like, hey, Jesus, so Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they were at who? You know, the guy who was back over there, and he had the toga-looking thing on, and he had well, everybody has those on. Well, yeah, he had the sandals, and, you know, he was left-handed. I don't know. That wasn't the kind of relationship. He knew who they were. And not only that, these folks, they believed that Jesus was the Christ. So they're not just like, I know who you are, Jesus, and Jesus, you know who I am, and that's fine. We'll hold you off it. No, we believe. You're it. And I think this is really cool. We're not going to spend much time here, but just so you know, and you'll see it through the word teacher as we're coming through here, but Jesus has been teaching them, so they have learned and they are learning. So they have known some things from Jesus directly, which this is incredible. It's incredible. You're like, why is it incredible? Because remember, the family, the three kids there's Lazarus, who's a dude, and that's normal for the dude to have a relationship and a learning relationship with a rabbi. But then there's Mary and Martha, and it's very, very weird for that to happen because of how women were viewed back in the culture. And yet, Jesus bunks it all and says, you're precious, you're valuable, come home. This is incredible. But that's for another talk. So it's important that we know where they live, kind of their social status there, their economic status, that they were friends of Jesus, that they believed that he was the Christ, that they had learned some stuff, and in the process of learning, basically if they were to show up here, they would be like junction studs. You know, we'd be like, wow, Mary, wow, she always has the answers. And man, Martha, she's just always serving. It's incredible. And Lazarus, well, what else did he do? He died, so he's sleeping, and he always wakes up, you know, at the right time. But if they were here, we would really admire them. And I think that's really, really cool because, honestly, before we even dive in, this is a wonderful, those characteristics of learning, have learned and are learning that you know Jesus, that you love Jesus, that you know that he's the Christ. These are great and key foundations for you to be prepared to walk through those disappointing times. So it's important for us to know their foundation, their starting foundation is really, really good. All right, now, we're going to dive through now. I got some symbols here. It doesn't fully matter, but the thumbs up as we read, what's going to happen is we're just going to stop and make some observation of these are some things that they did really, really well. These are the things that, how to handle disappointment, what they did well, hence the thumbs up. And then the telescope, like, my ways are so much higher than your ways. These are some things that's part of the story that they have no clue about. And it's funny, what you're going to see is because they have no clue about the bigger picture of what God is up to in the middle of this, what Jesus is up to in the middle of this, they're very confused, not just Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, but his disciples as well. There's confusion there because they're only looking down here in the maze saying it doesn't make sense that we're going right. We should be going left. And so there's just some confusion there, but the confusion is because he is so much greater. Make sense? Good. Let's read here just a little bit. John 11, and I'm going to read, not to disappoint you all, but I just want us to enjoy this experience. I don't know, listening to me read is an enjoyable experience, but let's just dive in here, because I don't want to interrupt y'all and say, wait, stop, here we go. John chapter 11. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So they're ill, brother ill. Oh no, what do we do? So the sisters sent word to him, it's capitalized him, to Jesus, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now, Jesus, he loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, because he loved them so very much, he stayed right where he was 2 days longer. That's weird. That's kind of weird. But let's look here, because there's some stuff here that we can learn. I mean, there's some really good stuff here that we, right away there's a need, there's a problem, and what do? They call on Jesus. That's the very first thing that we need to understand. When we come into disappointment, is that our first thing? Or we're like, oh, this happened? Lord. Or is it this happened? No. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. Hey, brother. Hey, sister. Hey, friend. Oh, let me post. Everybody, would you please be praying for me? This is big emergency. Do we reach every place else first? Or is the very first thing that we do when things fall out is to stop and go like, God, I need you. I don't know what is going on. They did awesome in this. And we can learn a lot from this. I don't know about you, but my natural default, if I'm left to myself when something bad happens, is I want to get angry. And then I know that when I get angry that I'm frustrated and I'll take it out on somebody else. So I want to get angry and I want to just withdraw. I want to go away. And I want to work my anger out privately so nobody can see the ugly mess and then just reappear as if everything is A-okay. But that's not what they did. They reached out to Jesus. And they understood that they were loved. I think that's just really, Jesus, the one whom you love. They understood their foundation was, man, he's loved by you. Do you know that? Do you know how incredibly loved you are? Is that like, man, God, I'm here in my hurt and I know, thank you that you love me and I know that you care. Even though everything around me looks differently than what I expected, I'm trusting you because I'm going to go left even though I feel like I should go right. Do you know, are you operating from that? Bad thing happens, we quickly look to God and we rest in the fact that, man, I'm loved. But see, then Jesus, so they did that well. Now, Jesus' vantage point, he's like, hey, this sickness is not going to end. The ultimate end of this sickness is not death. The ultimate end is really God's glory. And that should clue us in right away that no matter what you are facing or have faced, that God wants to use that. It will somehow use that to bring glory to his name. Well, how? Hurricane Harvey hits. A lot of devastation. How is God going to use that to glorify his name? And then you begin to see the church. People give of their time and give of their resources, and they begin to outgive and outperform all the emergency response federal systems in incredible ways. There's greater outpouring from the church, and the people are going, huh? He's bringing glory to himself. God's glory is the aim, and then he waits for 2 days. And so that seems really confusing. He's sick, he needs help. Why aren't you running right to it? Because my aim is God's glory. And I'm playing the big game. You're looking at just a very small thing. And so for Mary and Martha, I can imagine sitting there going, we sent the letter, how come he hasn't come back? Why isn't he coming here? I can see the disciples, well, what's going on? We're just waiting? Well, let's continue the story here. John 11:7 through 16. Then after this, Jesus, said to the disciples, let us go again to Judea. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, because remember what had just happened? They were in the temple. Are you the son? Yep, I'm the son. They pick up stones to kill him. Okay, so remember, okay. So the disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you. And you're going to go back there again? And Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night and he stumbles because the light is not in him. This he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may wake him up out of sleep. And the disciples said to him, oh, well, Lord, if he has just fallen asleep, he'll recover just fine. And Jesus is like, okay, let me speak just a little, because I'm up here. Let me bring it down to your level, dudes. Here we go. So Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. And therefore Thomas, he said to his fellow disciples, let us go so that we may die with you. Hurrah! Way to go, Thomas. You're only mentioned like 4 times, and that's like a great way to be mentioned. Hey, so that's the win for the disciples here. We're like, okay, Jesus says we're going to go. We trust you, Jesus. That's a total act of trust. Like, they were going to kill you. We're with you. We're going to go die, but we're following you. That's incredible trust. Incredible. But you see, from God's perspective, you see from Jesus as he's looking at things, his ways that are so much higher, Lazarus is dead. But I'm going to go down so you guys can be amazed, so that you can see and be encouraged in your faith to see just how powerful and how awesome and how amazing and how very, very real this thing is of God Almighty and his great love for you. So come on, you're going to be encouraged by this. God is in absolute control. We're going to go wake up Lazarus, and your faith is going to be strengthened. But I thought it was just like we were supposed to go wake some. No, there's a purpose for this. Your faith is to be strengthened, to change. Now, he's waiting 2 days, and it is kind of weird, but here's the deal. So back then, the belief was you die, and your spirit kind of hovers around the body. Just in case it was a false alert. I don't want to run away. Are you revived? No, not yet. Okay, we're waiting. So the thinking was that would happen. And then after 3 days, if you got to the 4th day, then you're dead. Like really, really super, super, super dead. There is absolutely zero hope. There is no way ever that you will ever come back to life. You're gone. So Jesus is like, we're going to wait 2 days, and the journey takes 2 days to get down there, so it's going to be 4 days so that everybody knows, because remember, what's the ultimate aim? Is God's glory. So I want to make sure that everybody knows he's dead, and there is no hope. And I hope am going to show up, and God's going to do something cool, and your faith is going to be strengthened. This is just really kind of cool, but they're clueless. Let's just go die. And there goes Jesus. Let's continue. 11, we're going to go 17 through 27. So, and this is where it gets good. This is where I hope if you've fallen asleep, you can wake back up. Because you should be able to connect with these characters. You should be able, when you read these interchanges, you should be able to put yourself in them and be like, oh, I get it. I understand. I've been there. 17. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them and concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Did you catch that? Lord, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. What are you doing? We called for you. You didn't come. What gives? I thought you loved us. It's not written here in the text, but I hope you can feel some of the emotion here. The one that you love is sick. You should drop everything and come running. You didn't, and he's dead. What are you doing? God then took a lightning bolt and smote her. No, he doesn't get angry. He's big enough to handle those questions. We can be open and honest with him. then she continues, even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. There is hope in this situation, and I'm here. Martha said to him, well, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus, thanks. I mean, I know that when we way at the end that we'll see him again. I know. I guess that helps. That's good. Thanks. And Jesus said to her, no, listen, I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. I mean, I just hope you can see that she's like, you're here. Why weren't you here when we needed you? He's dead. It's your fault. Yeah, I mean, I know you can ask for whatever, and he'll rise again sometime way off there, but this is horrible. But I want you to see the things. She's grieving. You get the Jews coming in from Jerusalem to console them. So with the loss, there's grieving, and that's okay. I think it's good for us to know this. When there's loss that happens, it's good to grieve. It's okay to shed a tear. And when you're with somebody who's shedding a tear, it's okay to walk alongside of them and cry with them. It's okay to have a season of grieving. She calls him Lord. I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's addressed this way all the way through. Even when there's hope, Lord, the one whom you love, is sick. He shows up, Lord, where were you? But you're still elevated. You're still Lord. And she expresses honest thoughts and emotions. And Jesus, she's saying, what's going on? Where were you? What are you doing? And he shows up essentially and says, hey, listen, Martha, the story's not over. It's not over. How do you know? Because my ways are higher than your ways. God will be glorified. Just, would you trust me? Would you trust me? Look at me. Look at me. Well, she runs off to get her sister. 28 through 32. When she said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, Mary, the teacher. And that's where it's really cool because, again, this is not normal for women to have teachers, a rabbi. This is so not normal back in the day. We just read it and like, oh yeah. This is really, really radical. But anyway, Mary, the teacher. Yeah, the teacher. He's here and he's calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still at the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, well, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying, hey, you, what's wrong with you? Fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Exactly the same thing. Where were you? We sent for you, Lord. He's dead. It's your fault. And it's really kind of a unique thing here, isn't it? Because she's worshiping him, and yet is being open and honest with like, this is just crazy. What's going on here? And I hope, again, you can see she's grieving, she's weeping. Calls him Lord. She's expressing these honest thoughts and emotion, and there's constant movement towards Jesus. These are the things that she's doing really, really well. Things that we need to make sure that we're doing when those hard times hit. Quickly moving towards him. Now, you'll notice there's nothing with the telescope because Jesus hadn't done anything yet. He's just, okay. And this is where the story gets really, really, I find this very, very interesting. Let's go to 33 through 37. Lord, where were you? Had you been here, he wouldn't have died. When Jesus, now we're going to be keen students of the word here. Now, when Jesus, therefore, saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, oh, see, don't you see how much he loved him? But some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man also from dying? This is what's really interesting here. You come into this deeply moved. Now, this word is really weird. It's really interesting because it's only used another 3 times. It's used twice here in this section, and it's used another 3 times in the New Testament. A very rare word. And every time it has the idea of a very strong rebuke, of anger welling up inside and rebuking people. That's very interesting. So Jesus is there, sees that she's weeping, and Jesus, being moved with great emotion, almost anger, is getting ready to respond. This is weird. Well, why? Some people, and we don't 1,000% know why, but just follow with me. Here are some of the most popular thoughts. Some of them are like, Jesus began to weep because, just like the Jew said, because he loved Lazarus so much, he showed up, he was like, oh, he's dead. Oh. But let me ask you this question. How many times has the mass of Jewish people been right concerning Jesus in the Bible? Give us Barabbas. Crucify Jesus. So we can't really say that, yeah, let's get on board with that, but also, oh, Lazarus is dead. Oh, my heart breaks because earlier he said, I'm going to wake him up. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that he's moved with anger because Lazarus has died. But some will say that. I don't think so. Others will say he's just mad at death. Oh, I'm so frustrated that there's death. And yet, I'm the resurrection, he says. So to me, okay, I'm not going to live or die on this hill, but to me, I'm like, yeah. But, what else was going on? What triggered this? Did you see it? I slowed down. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him fall at his feet. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. 33. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping. Okay. Mary is responding to the tragedy exactly the same way. Exactly the same way as the unbelieving Jewish folks who were there to console her, to comfort her. And he looks and he sees, you're weeping and you're weeping, all exactly the same way. But Mary, you know me. I'm the resurrection. I am the life. You should always have hope, even in the darkest time. You should not look exactly like an unbeliever. You shouldn't. And if you're thinking, I don't know, 1 Thessalonians 4:13. I don't have anybody else looking it up, but that's okay. If you get there before I do, you can read it. It's very interesting. Paul kind of jumps on this one here. Back up here. I always pass Thessalonians. You get to the T's in the New Testament, and it goes longest to the shortest. So if you're always like, where's Titus? If you get to Thessalonians or Timothy, you're there, and then you're like, well, Titus is shorter than Timothy, so just keep going. It's really convenient. Anyway, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. But we who do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are also asleep, so that you will not grieve as do the rest of those who have no hope. We want you to know, brethren, we want you to know, believers, that death is not the end, and that when you grieve, especially when you're grieving over a believer, this is not the end, and we should look a little bit different in our grieving process. I look at that and I see Jesus welling up. He sees her grieving as these people are grieving, and he's like, you should have hope. You know me. You know my character. You know what I can do. You know what I have said. Even as you're grieving, which is okay, there should be just a little fragment of hope. Because I work all things to the good of those who love me. And has that ever happened to you before? Like you're just so frustrated, you just don't know, and you just start crying? Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me a few times in my life where I've just been like, the situations have been so frustrating to me that I just start weeping, and I'm not an emotional guy. And I'm like, oh! And I can see Jesus like, Mary, I love you so much. How are you not getting this? You got to understand this. you are to be different, there's always, always hope. There's a bigger picture. Remember, your ways are not my ways. There's always hope. And I was thinking about this. See, typically when bad things happen, what we do is we fixate on the loss. The relationship ended. And so I just look at the relationship. Oh, man, I really miss them. I miss them. And then you walk throughout life, and as you walk, you're like, oh, look, there's gum on the ground that I just stepped in. And the last time I did that, it was her gum that she spit out, and I stepped in it. Oh, I remember. For a season, that might be okay, but when it's 3 years later and you're doing that, there's something really wrong. But a lot of times the world, that's what we do. We look at the object that's been lost and we just keep fixating on it, fixating on it, fixating on it, fixating on it. And Jesus is like, there's something higher. There's something, remember my ways are different, so get your head up. Lift your head up. So I was running the other day, which it's more like a slow trot. But anyway, I'm coming, and it's really, people can hear me coming because I mean, it's just really bad. And so as I'm running, there's a bus stop, and there's some wonderful Aggie students who are waiting for the bus, and the sidewalk's not very, very wide, and there's a utility pole, and there's like 5, 6, 7 of them standing there, all in the middle of the very narrow sidewalk, all with headphones in, doing this. All had their heads down. Heads down, heads down, heads down, heads down. And it's a busy road. Now, there's not enough room for me to get between them and the pole, and there's not enough room for me to get from here, because I think there's a bench back here, but the only option was either one of two things needed to happen. They needed to take this much of a step back, and I could trot on through safety, or I need to step out onto traffic and maybe get hit by the bus that they're waiting for. It's very interesting. So traffic was clear, not a big deal. I step outside, and I'm running on the street, and as I walk by, I smile and wave. Good morning. Every single one of them. I'm like, that's just really sad. They just have their eyes down. And what are they doing? They're just scrolling through, looking at everybody else's stuff on social media and being like, oh, well, their life's perfect. Their life is perfect. My life is horrible. Their life is perfect. And they're just sitting there, their head down. Well, on my way back, I had to pass another bus stop. And it was very interesting. Same scenario. And there was a girl, and she's out in the middle of the sidewalk, and she does this. Oh. And I run on by, and I look at her, I smile, I say, hey, thank you. And she said, oh, you're welcome. And off I went, feeling very blessed, very encouraged. I felt like there was actually a connection because there was eye-to-eye contact. It was just really, I felt like, man, that was good. Versus, and I wanted to, and I wanted to stop and turn right back around and come back and say, hey, what made you take a step back? Like, why would you serve me that way by taking a step back? I wanted to go do that. I didn't, and I kicked myself. But I would imagine her response would have been something like this. Well, I saw you running and saw there was not enough room, and therefore I simply took a step back. It's not rocket science. And I would have been like, thank you, that's so right, because your head was up. Because your head was up, you could engage with the world around you. Because your head was up, you could bless other people around you. Because your head was up, you could actually interact with other people and be, a huge blessing to me who's ready to have a heart attack because I've had to run and I'm not very good at it. And so, all because she had her head up. When we grieve, do we just do this? Are we just standing in the way and just an obstacle? Is that all we do? And there's a time, and it's okay, a season, brief season for that. Or do we grieve differently? Knowing that there's always hope because there's Jesus and this is not the end. And do we have our head up and saying, even though this hurts, oh, there's a brother, there's a sister, you know what? Let me step back. I can be a blessing to you. And as you come by, I can acknowledge your existence and I can continue to be useful even when I'm grieving. There's a huge difference here. And so as I was running through there, I'm like, man, God, you're just really good because I see grieving of the world down here. We become so self-absorbed, and you're calling us higher. We're in the maze, and we're to be looking up saying, oh, you're the author and perfecter of our faith. Let me know where I need to go because I want my faith to grow. What's next, Jesus? Where? How do you respond? I think this is truly, truly incredible. He's saying, guys, the story's not over. Yes, you're hurting, but it's not over. From your vantage point, you think it's over. Now, you and I, we know, we've already had the spoiler alert. We know what happens at the end. He's going to be raised. They didn't know that. And so Jesus is there in the middle of their heartache and saying, the story is not over. If you're in the midst of heartache right now, you need to know the story is not over. He is not done with you. This is not the end of you. Whether you've lost a job, you've been kicked out of school, a relationship has ended, it does not matter. He is not done with you. It's incredible. God's going to be glorified, and he's just saying, look at me. Now let's read, we're going to be surprised by the ending, I'm fairly certain. John 11 here, 38. So Jesus, again, being deeply moved, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, hey, remove the stone. Now, just stop for a second. Remove the stone. And Jesus, Martha, the sister that she said, Jesus, that's crazy, because by now he stinketh. He smelled real bad. No. He's been dead for 4 days. And Jesus is like, trust me. The story is not done. Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And 41 is an incredible verse. You probably don't have it underlined, or if you do, maybe you have the different part of the verse that excites me. So they removed the stone. It makes no sense to us. He's dead and he smells bad, but you're here, Jesus, and you're telling us to do something that makes no sense. I'm hurting, and man, this is just going to only bring back bad memories, but okay. If you say that, okay, I trust you. It's a huge thing. Remove the stone. And then Jesus raised his eyes. What did he do? Jesus raised his eyes. Jesus, who perfectly images what we're to be at the time of need, raises his eyes and said, Father, I thank you. Father, my friend is dead, and yet, Father, I thank you. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me. They moved the stone. That was their thing. Didn't make any sense. Man, I'm really hurting, but I feel like, in the midst of my pain, I kind of feel like I'm supposed to be kind of engaged and go to this retreat. I don't want to go to the retreat because I'm hurting. This doesn't make any sense. The stirring in my heart doesn't make any sense. Remove the stone. I've just suffered financial loss. Like I'm near broke, and yet missionaries who are serving overseas, Christmas time is coming. God just welled up in my heart that I'm supposed to give $50. I don't have $50. What am I supposed to do? God, I just lost my job. Remove the stone. It's powerful. Jesus, he looks up, he images dependence and trust, which is exactly what we are to do in our times of grieving. And as we finish up here, and I will try to move quickly, after he had got done praying, when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth! The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw that what he had done, they believed in him. Y'all, when they removed the stone, they had no idea, was Jesus going to be able to raise Lazarus? They didn't know. They didn't know. It was an act of faith. Really incredible. They believed, and God's glory is right there. He's bringing life where there was death before. Now, from this, you're going to be like, okay, well now what I've learned is if this relationship is falling apart, or my job is falling apart, if I just ask Jesus to come and have a little complaint session with him, he's going to give it right back to me. And that's not at all. Remember, his ways are not your ways. It's higher, but he's always working. He's always moving about for his glory. And he desires for you and I to image him well as we go through this. And it's not easy. See, the temptation is that you sit there and go, well, some of you know me, some of you don't. Well, Todd, it's because you lived a charmed life. Man, that's so not the case. I could walk you through disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, but one of the things here that has been one of the greatest, I think, hardest times of my life was Erin's not my first wife. I was single until the age of 32, and I was certain that this is the woman that God had brought to me. And as soon as we said I do, we went on our honeymoon, we came back, and right away she's like, she got mad and said, let's be done. Let's go to the courthouse right now. I'm like, what? We just bought you shoes. Like, where's this coming from? And then as time continued to go on, we found ourselves laid off, let go from our ministry job. I'm just embarrassed that you do ministry work. What? Where's this coming from? She was unfaithful. She shows up to my house as I'm thinking, like, this is the time. She's just disappeared for a while. I don't know where she is. I get calls from strangers wondering, did the blonde-haired girl make it home last night? Because she had to borrow my phone and she called this number and there was somebody chasing her. I just wanted to know, did she make it home okay? I don't know. I haven't seen her. She won't talk to me. She won't respond to any text. I don't know where she is. And she shows up. She's heartbroken, and we're thinking, like, this is the day. God has answered her prayers. He has weighed on her heart that she has blown it, and she's coming back home, and this is great because she knows my desire is for reconciliation and restoration. And then out of the mouth comes, Todd, I just got to let you know, she's tears down her face. Can you help me? I've messed it up with the person that I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. He just broke up with me. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're married. And you're asking me how to help you win your boyfriend back? This is not just, pie in the sky. Isn't that neat for Lazarus and Mary and Martha? It was the worst time of my life. Because she was embarrassed at the fact that I did ministry work. I quit ministry work and I took a job working in insurance where I spent every hour of every day being yelled at and called all sorts of wonderful things because people made dumb choices in not returning their rental cars. And I got to be told over and over again how worthless I was, why my life was totally falling apart. And I would come home, and when I would come home, many times my parents, they did a wonderful job because I was living with them. They did a wonderful job of giving me space, but also loving on me and allowing me to talk and allowing me to grieve. They just did a great job. And my sister and brother-in-law, they did a great job. And I had a few core friends around who just did a great job. When they heard the news, the first thing, like, Todd, we hurt for you. We just love you. But I would come home trying to process these things. Like, what has happened? My life has fallen apart. And I would come back. And I would sit in this chair with that light on, and I would pull out a guitar, and I would cry for a while, and I would play Rich Mullins' song, Hold Me Jesus. If you've never heard it before, it's a great song, Hold Me Jesus, because I'm shaken like a leaf. You've been King of my glory, won't you be my Prince of Peace? And I would sing it over and over again as the sun would go down, as everything else would get dark except for one little light on this chair. And I wish I could tell you that I suffered perfectly well. I wish I could tell you, after 3 weeks I was fine, or after a month I was fine, but it was a long time. And there were many conversations just like this. Jesus, I've never prayed more for anything than this restoration, and yet it's not happening. Where are you? What are you doing? Am I not good enough? Have I not given enough? I was able to have these honest conversations. And little by little, and if you're ever really bored, we'll go to San Antonio someday and I can take you on the trail of tears of mine of, like, at this stoplight right here, I was the second car back, and this is where I heard myself laugh for the first time, and I had a positive thought about myself that, I am kind of funny. And where I realized that was the rock bottom and I was moving towards healing. And I thought throughout this healing process, I just saw God's faithfulness in a lot of different ways. And then I thought, you know what, I'm back. I mean, it was bad. I couldn't look people in the eye. I mean, I just couldn't. You would see me, and this is what I would do. I would just, didn't laugh, no excitement. And as I began to come back, it was interesting. Just before the turning point, well, I'm at my weakest place. God does this. Todd, you know, many times you chose peace, your own personal peace, instead of addressing an issue because you were fearful that it would cause an eruption in your marriage. Yes, there were lots of tension-filled days that were around there, but when you'd have one of those 1 or 2 days where it was calm, instead of then entering in, and you knew that it would explode into something else and you'd be back on eggshells for the next 10 days. But Todd, in the middle of that, you were called to lead, and in the middle of that, many times you were silent. I'm like, are you kidding me, God? I'm at my lowest point in life, and what are you, welling up? And you know, you're deeply moved, and your deeply movedness is coming on me? How dare you? No, he's such a good God. I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're right. Not that it would have made a difference, but Father, you're right. I need to lead better. And as healing came through, I really began to feel like, yeah, I'm back. I'm more me. And it was really weird thing because I started enjoying things again, but it never felt like the same enjoyment. Like I felt like, you know, pre-divorce, like, woo, this is awesome. You know, double stuffed Oreo, yes. Post-divorce, double stuffed Oreo, yeah. And I thought, I think this is just what life is supposed to be. I think the purpose of my life is just to suffer well. So much so that I actually went and went to counseling and was like, here's my question. It used to be here, and now it's here. Is that normal? And as time went on, I began to realize that no, it's not normal, but healing takes some time. I love God's word because they're asking the same questions I was asking. It wasn't that my brother died. I have a brother. And was brought back to life. And my marriage, that's a death. And it didn't get restored. And yet God is still good. The funny thing is, through that most painful time, I cannot tell you the number of people. I cannot tell you the number of people who have said this. Like, Todd, that just makes you human. I am much more willing now to share with you this in my life. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have had the opportunity to talk with people in troubled marriages and like ask them the question like, well, is the person actually communicating with you? Well, yeah, but they're being unreasonable. Whoa. Before you're bailing, they're at least showing up to counseling. Go. Keep pursuing. Stop being so selfish. Well, okay. Incredible things have happened. And through that all, as time has gone on looking back, I've really thought about this. Disappointments, they mark me, but they don't define me. Christ does. This is what he told me. I don't know what he told me, but what I learned as I came out of that is like, yes, I can't do anything. I can't go back and undo anything that has happened to me. And that will always leave a mark, an imprint on my life. But that does not define me. Christ does. And that's incredible. Because he has great things to say about me and about you. See, my temptation, though, is the world looking down at the disappointment over and over again. We begin to allow that to define us. When we get our eyes up and onto him, we realize Christ is the one who does. Wrapping it up here. Right now, we got to be prepared. We got to have the solid foundation. Do you know Jesus? Do you know his love? Are you learning? Are you continuing to grow in your knowledge of who he is? And not just like, oh, I now know that the word deeply moved means. No, not that kind of learning. Like, are you really getting to know him, his character? Are you being blown away like, you're good? I don't understand how you're good, but you are good. I don't get it. In the middle of this dark time that I thought there was no hope, looking back, I have seen you work good out of that. That's incredible. Do we know that? Are you really comfortable with him being bigger than you? Are you really okay being in the maze and having him be up top? Are you really okay with that? Are you like, well, I am, but no. Because remember, that was Genesis 3, right? You'll be like God. You know, you're the one who should be worshipped. No. Are you okay? His ways are higher than mine. And so when disappointments hit, I don't know how you're going to work this for good, but God, I'm trusting. Your ways are different than mine. They're better. And then when the hard times hit, you got to know. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to have your guitar in the chair with a light bulb coming down, singing, hold me, Jesus. I'm shaking like a leaf. You've been King of my glory. Would you be my Prince of Peace? It's okay to do that, but there's hope. We're willing to remove the stone. I don't understand why you're asking me to do this, but okay. Do you run to Jesus? Are you honest with him about your hurts? Or are you still trying to be like, well, I'm really, really mad, but you know what? It's Jesus, so I have to be like, oh, great Father, thou didst make the world in thine or awesomeness. And it's just these empty words that are going up because he already knows your heart. He already knows if you're angry and mad. And you get this, he's big enough for you to be open and honest. Mary and Martha were. Community. I'm a parent. I'm a sister and brother-in-law and their family. I had a few close friends who were there that walked with me. Do you have that? How do you understand? I have a horrible family. Okay, well, do you have some close community of people that when it hits, that you can lean on them and they will love you incredibly well? Well, no, I don't have any of that because nobody will be my community. Are you taking any steps to grow in your relationship with other people? Well, no, people should just do it for me. Don't fall into that isolation. Listen, if you're stuck, if you're in the middle of things and you've been stuck for a long time, you got to know it's okay to get help. It's okay. If it starts by saying like, well, Todd, I need to talk, and I said, like, dude, you are so far beyond my pay grade. It's not me saying you're so messed up, there's no hope. Like, let's find somebody who can help you process this better than me. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need to know that. And know this. If you hear nothing else that I say, please know this. The story is not over. It's not. Challenges as you go, or as you go into your small groups here. Man, are you looking up? Or are you looking down? Does this describe you? These are the tragedies of my life. They define me. Here it is. I'm just doing this, and I'm not very useful, not very intentional to anybody else. Or are you head on the swivel? I challenge you, memorize Isaiah 55, 8, and 9. Really get that in. Begin to think about that more and more and more. His ways, they're greater than yours. Are you okay with that? Get okay with that. And then grow in close community. Man, grab a real meal. What that means is not like, oh, was it like a tea party with a little girl versus like, no, a real meal. Like you go and you're grabbing real food, but you're having real conversation. Not just like, my name is Todd and, I work at Grace Bible Church and I drive a Mini Cooper and, man, my name's Todd, man. I love Jesus, but there's been some hard times, man. I'm sleep deprived. I stepped in gum. I feel like my life is falling apart, but God is good. How's your day? Can we just begin to have some real conversations about what's going on?